Right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Brunel is not well today, so she asked me just to facilitate the session for her, and I'm glad to do so. I hope you're all doing well, and I'm really looking forward at our Ph.D. candidate, Pieter Louw, and it seems to me, if I understand correct, that he's going to talk about matters related to project management.
Correct.
Now, saying that, Bernard, we can almost immediately have the fear that as a PhD, he may fall prey to the notion of doing a project, as opposed to doing a thesis. But that's just an assumption that we could make. And the reason why I would say that, Peter, is that we've sensed over the last 10 years that when we get strong workplace focused theses on project management, on supply chain management, the guys who are at ESCOM often in supply chain management, Corey, the challenge is how to make that, and even in the construction, how to make that thesis a research thesis and not a project.
Correct.
So we're looking forward to hear. I know you're very much still in the beginning of your journey, but we hope to hear from you just to talk to us a little bit through it, and then we'll have some questions, and hopefully there will be some of the alumni who can make input. And hopefully you can leave today with at least 1 or 2, 3 people that can join you on your research journey. Because that's the whole reason about our curiosity session, is that you'll at least get somebody here that says, it's not that tough, I'll work with you, I'll walk with you, and to just take hands and go into forward. So with those few words, I'm going to say welcome, and maybe start off by sharing with us, where does your grounding come from? We almost want to say, introduce us to this thesis writer.
I'm Pieter Louw, and thank you for the opportunity. It's an understatement if I say I'm nervous, but I'll get over that. Once we get to paragraph 2, it should be fine. But thank you again, and it's good to have this opportunity. And there certainly are a few things that I'd rely on my colleagues here to assist me with, and to help me build on research methodology and going forward. Where I come from, I studied electrical engineering, and I also then went into mining engineering and did mineral economics as an MSc, and spent a lot of time on the mines in terms of Anglo-American and Anglo-Gold. I've built big mining projects over the world: Australia, Russia, North America, South America. And some of those projects were fairly successful, but some of them were less successful. And there's always reasons why projects are less successful, and you only find those out after the event as to why it wasn't a success. There were even projects that got to the point where they were perceived in terms of the triple constraint, scope, time and budget, that they complied, but the outcome of the projects, what they delivered in the end, were not the correct outcome for the customer. So I wondered what could I do in terms of this, and what is out there that I'm missing. And I happened to stumble across the term complex project management. So I started researching that, and then I started linking it to system thinking and understanding how system thinking fits in with complexity. And I started reading the books of the gurus, the Peter Senge, Fifth Discipline, those. I started looking at models for identifying complexity and complex projects before the time. But I found some of those models, or most of those models in actual fact, only look at certain aspects of complexity. They don't address the whole part of the system, which is the crux of a system in terms of system thinking. And I needed to, or I'm trying to find what can I do in terms of that whole process. What that did for me in terms of my literature research was to drive me into areas where I started looking at what's the competency and the knowledge areas, not so much competency, but knowledge areas that a project manager must have to be able to manage complex projects. To understand what is it, what must the team knowledge be, the team makeup in terms of the people in the team, and how what their knowledge base must be to build on managing complex projects. And I'm at this stage. I'm in the last throes of writing up my literature review and concluding that. So I'm doing a section on stakeholder management, because stakeholder management is also very prevalent when it comes through in complex projects. What I'm trying to then achieve is to develop, at the end of the day, a methodology for project managers to manage complex projects, and then using systems thinking. And the way I actually did this was to start from the back end, looked at systems thinking, then looked at complex projects, then looked at integration, and then looked at the methodology in terms of this whole process to see how the one flows through to the other one.
Okay, this is quite a lot. Brian, what do you hear?
I hear, it's an extremely broad subject. I hear exposure to large capital projects with multiple stakeholders. You asked what I hear, but my only one concern is when you talk about a team. The team is so big. The team might cross the boundaries between the customer and the stakeholder and the supplier. So what is a team? That's mine.
Okay, so that's a question.
That's a question.
You don't need to answer now.
Okay. But what? Yeah.
I think what's important, he gave us a lot of information already, because he made it clear that his aim is he's going to design a method for project managers from a systems point of view. There's going to be a product. So what do you hear from that point of view, Corey?
Yeah, Prof, this is a subject close to my heart, because I understand the temporality and permanence in the project management context. Looking at methodologies, specifically, then you obviously look at what Prince has done, the UK has done with their complexity, when projects in complex environments is what Prince is all about. And then the other methodologies that are delivery specific, such as MP and N123 and the like. I'd be curious to know, if we look at an integrated methodology, how you will contrast that to the maturity thinking of Kirsten and Dinsmore and the like. And because there's delivery, but there's integrated delivery from an organizational perspective. I think to answer the question from my colleague on teams, I don't think that's too difficult for you to deal with. But from a systems perspective, what theoretical approaches you'll apply. Well, you look at complex capital theories and the like, critical realism maybe, and to find out more what lies behind this, how to set up a methodology and tools and techniques.
So the value that you can add is to provide him almost some dots, some collecting points, some reference points, for him to ensure that his literature review really covers.
You must look at what
and all of those
look
details.
At what the Scandinavians are doing, Sutherland and the like,
amongst others.
Yeah, and what they do with the methodological thinking, but integrated is what I'm curious about, because organizations want tools and techniques for project managers, but they don't associate this periphery of financial management and HR management. Therein lies some very exciting journey.
Okay, so let me ask someone else a question. I won't ask the child, but Rian. So, do you think this candidate who's going to write this thesis, do you think that he is anticipating that his own experience can be valued and serve as a reference? Because that's where he started. He had this great opportunity of being in multiple contexts. But do you get a sense that he's going to use that information?
Yeah, I must say, I worked with Pieter
That's a
20
pity.
years ago plus.
Okay.
And
That's what I saw.
in that context, Pieter was in the engineering field and I was in the non-technical side of engineer development. So yes, I think Pieter will probably rely heavily on his experience.
But do you think he will articulate it? Or is he just going to say, I had an experience? Because almost if you talk about a literature review, you don't think of yourself. I'm curious, how are you going to incorporate your own experience, all those documents, all those reports that has been written, obviously, over that time? Do you see that as part of your literature review?
It is certainly part of the literature review because that's the grounding for starting off. In terms of traditional project management, and that's what I refer when I refer to that part of it, I refer to it as traditional project management. And what I found was this gap between traditional project management and complex project management. And that's what I'm trying to close, is this gap through doing the methodology, the integration. Maybe just to go to the team concept and what I mean in teams. There is the project team, there is the stakeholder team, there is the organization, there is the environment that they're all operating. Those are all the aspects that I've looked at, and those are the things that I've integrated, or looking at the integration and how that works. I did actually look at a lot of research papers from Scandinavian countries and those places as well. So that I haven't covered it all, but and we can have a good discussion around that later on.
Do you, Edward?
I'd like to jump in here. So first of all, hopefully you are now more relaxed.
Yes.
But you are standing in awe and admiration, or encouraged to sit there. Many of us would not be able to do that. You referenced 3 traditional criteria by which project success are measured: cost, scope, and time. And that's great, because ultimately those boxes have to be ticked. But I want you to step away from that for a moment and reflect on the question: what difference do you wish your methodology based on system thinking must bring? What contribution do you want to bring to, because this is a managerial leadership assignment, what is the one contribution, one difference you'd like to make that doesn't necessarily just make it more effective on those 3 criteria, but brings another dimension to it?
Again, I need to just refer back to traditional project management. Those are the requirements for traditional project management. Complex project management have a lot more, or many more, requirements in terms of meeting the criteria. And that is getting to the point where you start looking, or I started looking at the knowledge base of what does a project manager require to become a leader. It's not so much, I think that the traditional bodies of knowledge, like we have for PMP or PMI and AMP, and those actually deal well with traditional project management and the methodology. They don't deal well to the extent that they need to in terms of complex project management. What has happened is that those institutions have actually realized that they need to do something about complex, and they try and drive their bodies of knowledge still forward in that sense, but on the side they are doing complex project management research.
Just to follow up, I get that, but my question really is, do you already have an initial notion that you're working with that says, I don't know what it is yet, but that's the contribution? Sorry,
I'm taking a long time to get there, but I'm on my way, trust me. What I found through my literature review was that a lot of tools have been developed, but those tools stand in isolation in certain categories or certain areas in terms of complex project management. My methodology will not be a tick list that you can say at the end of the day, this is what I have to do, this is what I have to do, this is what I have to do. In terms of systems thinking, you have to look at the whole process. You have to look at the whole system and take it and say, that is what the makeup is and the methodology is that you can follow in terms of managing a complex project. And that's really what I want to get to. That will hopefully, I can then take my research and experiences and share it with the bodies of knowledge that's out there in terms of project management. And that's really...
So I would like to ask, so you assume that the construct project management is a meaningful construct? Because you're almost dealing with it in saying, how can I just improve it? But it's okay, we accept project management is a meaningful way of working?
It is a meaningful way of working, but there needs to be a number of changes going forward. You will get a project manager, in my mind, and my research indicates that you'll get a project manager up to a certain point that can manage a traditional project. But to make that step over into becoming a project leader, because that I think will be the next phase. As complexity and becomes more known in terms of projects and the way to manage projects, complex projects, the term project manager will almost, in my mind, disappear, and it become a project leader, because that leader needs to work through people in the teams and not manage people. It's almost like you can say you can manage your inventory, but people need leadership. You don't manage people like you manage inventory, and those are the aspects that I'm hoping to bring forward.
Okay, so if we listen to what Pieter is saying, do you get a sense of what research methodologies you're going to work with? Sichalwa? Simon?
Not yet. Probably mostly qualitative.
Mostly qualitative. And what would be the specific designs that you can consider within that qualitative frame?
Could be project level.
Pieter, so tell us a bit more about your method, and are you already at that point, or you're not yet there?
I need to get to that point now, and I'd be very pleased or happy to get input into it. I had an idea that I could go with qualitative analysis and use the tools within that. But then through literature review and understanding complexity, that social complexity plays a great part in complex adaptive systems. Complex adaptive systems are projects. And that's the other name for projects and complex projects going forward. So in that, there's a social complexity aspect. The social complexity aspect I probably need to address through quantitative tools and
but you
methods.
probably still need a method to work with it.
Right.
Okay.
Can I'm still kind of restless here. So let me just confess my restlessness. Having grown up in engineering, electrical engineering, so we share electrical engineering as a common gene. So engineers are great at problem solving. And when I hear you have a burning ambition to solve a very important problem. Let me turn that on its head and ask you, are you posing the right thing? And I want to push that even harder. What's burning ambition? What is the ding in the universe that when your thesis lands on the table, what is the ding in the universe? Or will it just disappear into the cemetery of theses that has a title with project management software? So I want to really push you hard on this one. Get you into the problem posing as opposed to the problem solving space.
The problem that I battled with was to find out how do... It wasn't so much to determine why do projects fail. Project failure have been studied to the nth degree. It was more to understand and develop my own understanding and then do research in it to build up a case to say, here's a gap that I've identified between the traditional and the complex. I wanted to go deeper into the complex side of it. I wanted to understand what makes it complex. How do I determine before the time? How do I give a project leader going forward the tools to be able to identify complexity in a project before he starts the project?
It's still problem solving.
I realize it's still problem solving, but...
So let me try, Edward, and maybe some of the PhDs come in. What would happen if you, maybe you're doing it, what would happen if you engage project managers across the board, and you just sit down with them and you say, talk to me, what happens in the world of the project manager? What could happen?
it depends to what extent they've been involved outside of the traditional project management realm. If they're involved in the traditional project management realm, you'll get the normal thing that you get from project managers. This is the way they do it. They use a methodology, proven methodology and framework on one project, and they carry that over to the next project. And yeah, if it then fails, then they come back and they say, but why did it fail? What should we have done better? What didn't we do? What I'm trying to really do is to be upfront and give people a methodology and the tools to be able to realize and analyze their project, to say, is this going to be a difficult project? Is it going to be a complex project? And what do I do about it? And how do I manage it?
All right, so that's the approach. Chrissy?
Can I ask something?
Yes.
I want to know, you earlier were talking about competencies. And you said that traditional project manager obviously have a certain set of competencies that we all know should be there. How are you going to determine what kind of competencies your new project leader would need? And by determining that, I want to know what method. And there I get to where will you sit with project managers? Because I think you're quite right. I don't think the traditional project management approach works everywhere. I think there's definitely certain organizations where it's not working. And it's not because the competence is not there or the people are failing, but the question is why. And I really like the approach from taking it to a project leader. But my question will be is how will you determine what's the competency specific that's different?
What I discovered up to now was that project managers, traditional project managers, rely on hard skills. And we come from an engineering background, we carry that through, we're analytical, and that's what we use as the grounding. We have the bodies of knowledge, we take the bodies of knowledge and we actually build frameworks and methodologies based on that. But going to a complex project leader needs a different set of skills, and that is where this and I want to call it a person, needs to be able to manage through people. So, and the team knowledge, the people on the team also need to have similar knowledge, where it should almost be, when you execute a complex project, there shouldn't be a leader per se. Everybody should be in a position that can take that leadership role. Getting back to the not so much competencies, but what skills and knowledge. It's more knowledge based. So knowledge is the skills and experience of what that project leader needs, and that is the soft skills, the soft side of things. There's a new school of thought out there that they need to have proper operational experience. They need to have, besides the technical background, business experience. They need to be leaders. They need to have leadership skills. They need to have leadership training and that like. Does that answer it?
I think there's a lot of work that you can do around that as well.
Yeah.
I think the area you're going to is a very tricky area. The first thing here is you're talking about methodology, project management, and sometimes talking about system. But I think you should not confuse these two issues. Mm-hmm. You should keep talking about either the systems or the framework. That's what you're going to produce. Actually.
Yes.
So leave the methodology to research methodology, so that we don't confuse the issues.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now the complexity, as you're talking here, you have excuse me, you have attempted to delineate between something you call traditional project management and something you are actually calling complex project management. If you go into the definition of complexity, which I'm sure you're going to get into, you're going to see that what you call traditional project management is complex. And the complex project management is also complex. So it's not a matter of the level of complexity. So in that case, you may not necessarily be talking about a complex project management without talking about the level of complexity. And the basis for delineating between these things you say. The traditional project management, which you say is based on time, cost, and quality. If you look at the project management book of knowledge, which is probably written 50 years ago, it goes beyond that. actually goes beyond time, quality, and the cost. You get a point. So these are not the three areas where traditional project you are going to use to say that something is of traditional management scope, traditional project management scope. So it is much more complex than that. So the area of complexity, the understanding of complexity here, which is going to be a philosophical issue though, because we are doing a Ph.D. thesis, is where you are going to have a problem. Because if you are not able to distinguish uncontestedly the difference between what you call traditional project management and complex project management, you're going to have a problem there. You're going to have a philosophical problem. Do you get a point?
I get the point, and I actually contrasted complicated versus simple, simple versus complicated, complicated against complex, all those aspects in terms of
part of what he has, Kieswetter has actually tried to ask you here is what are you going to bring into the research or the project management? Are you going to be promoting management of complexity, or are you going to be talking about simplifying a complex situation? Because that is probably what you're going to come with. You don't have to continue with complexity. You can as well simplify it. That is the mark of genius, according to Albert Einstein. So if you continue to keep the complexity and leave it, just manage the complexity. So why can't you simplify it?
I think that's a valuable input that you can look for consideration. I like that play of articulating complexity versus complex management.
Yes.
I think that's something you could look at. Is there any pressing question you want to ask?
I guess I just had sorry, I'm here to learn, so
we're all here to learn.
But with a little bit of my background in projects, is an observation for me when I talk about traditional versus complex that is maybe not even towards more of a sliding scale. And I think for me, there's complex that's created by scale. So the project to use 100 Lego blocks to create a house versus the project, little model house versus the project to create an ocean liner is made complex just simply by the number of components, 100 versus several million components. So complexity is created by just the sheer size and scale of what you're after. And yet there's an observation that has to be made that even within that complexity, a lot of it is predictable. You have a plan for the ship before you lay the keel. You kind of know what you're in towards. Then there's the complexity for me that is quite interesting to me, and that's the complexity that's created by uncertainty. Now, so let's go back to the Lego example. I put 100 blocks down in front of the child and say, build a house. Okay, that's one level of uncertainty. Non-uncertain, versus just putting down a bunch of blocks and saying, I'd like you to build something that I like. So then so now you're sitting with a very different problem. You still have the same 100 blocks, but you're not really sure what the customer wants. And this is what we find in business projects, particularly software projects, where the goal that you're pursuing sometimes is inherently uncertain. And part of the project is to reduce the uncertainty. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on that long, but to me there's two different types of sources of complexity.
But I think it relates to what Emeka was saying. You're always creating us that awareness of what do we mean when we're doing this. Now, having listened to this, I always want you just to make a reflection and say, how has this informed the objectives that you want to establish for your study?
Certainly from an uncertainty point of view, from a skills point of view, I have looked at all of those aspects, maybe just to reflect on in terms of a Boeing 3 or a Airbus 380. The view is out there that it's a complicated project. It's not a complex project because it can be taken apart and can be put together again, and it can then fly again. Where complex things, yes, uncertainty plays a major part. The role of what we have in our minds, also our mind maps and the view or how we view things or see different things before the time also plays a big role. Looked at that. So There's certainly, I've got some valuable input from this afternoon, and thank you for that, and I'll certainly take that later on.
I want to suggest, Peter, that I come back to my point. What problem are you posing? And how do you avoid just coming up with a better mousetrap? Because that's the risk of what you do. You're adding to the inventory of mousetraps, and yours may be the best mousetrap. But do we need a better mousetrap in this discipline? Or do we need to pose a different set of problems? So, for example, let me share with you a couple of examples. That lady and I were privileged to be part of a tremendous project called e-filing. No amount of project management could have reduced a process that took almost 6 months to a process that now takes less than a second. I was involved in my earlier life in a project where its initial scope and scope, quality and time produced an answer which we challenged and rejected and posed different questions, and I won't go into the detail of now. The outcome was that the cost dropped to less than a third of the initial cost, and the time with a greater scope ended up into less than 1/6 of the original time. How do you achieve that exponential impact and not just an incremental impact with a better mousetrap? So my question really is, are you thinking expansively enough about this before you converge? And is there a sufficient restlessness and ambition in you to do something that will have a disruptive or an exponential impact on this discipline, this much needed discipline of project management and leadership? Because you have the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think what I want to suggest is, I hope you can talk to more people. Just talk to more people, and almost don't worry what their designations are, but just talk to more people to almost sense what I think what Edward is alluding to, and what Emeka and what Jeffrey is also alluding to. So you get that bigger picture of what you can't see yet. I think that would be quite critical.
Good.
Who's your supervisor?
Professor Pieter
Louw. So Simon, from the research office, you guys probably will also still work with Peter on the research methodology and design in going forward. Is that true?
Yep.
Thanks for that. That's why we're there, isn't it? So Peter, good luck with this.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to it, and that will really make an impact. Yes, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, so well done, and I really wish you all the success, and really wish this will become something big, and selfishly so. So I'm coming in from completely left field, from information technology point of view. And one of the areas that we're struggling in project management, especially complex capital projects, is people's understanding of all the moving parts they should have. So from a systems perspective and technology perspective, everything is there. Everything is there to run smoothly, from ideation through to projection, through to looking at where to invest, through to project-driven supply chain management, through to collecting sensory data of equipment while they're working and predicting maintenance so that you can mitigate a lot of the time and cost implications of the project on the go. But what we're finding is that the guys who are running the projects often don't have view of what all those moving parts are, or they think it's too complex. So before they can do anything to make their lives easier from a tools point of view, we all know that tools aren't going to solve it. But it's too tedious to then go and talk to IT to get money for a capital project, those kinds of things. So we're looking very closely at how we can combine technology with project management methodologies. Not necessarily something that's going to take 3 years and only resolve in a certain way, but so that you can take project management methodology, which you can apply to different types of projects, and literally put that on steroids. Because in the world today, we've got everything that you need to be able to do that, but you need people who are able to think broadly enough and have the vision to actually combine it. Because otherwise, you do often easily end up with yet another project methodology and disjointed pieces of things that can make it all work well, but there's nothing in the connective tissue that pulls it. So I'm really looking forward to the outcome of this, and I'd really like to further down the road see if there's an opportunity to work together to see if we can develop something.
Good. I'd appreciate that.
And I almost sense you're also referring to the human bridge.
Also,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
First time here, my name is Ravi. Peter, do I get a sense that maybe somewhere in the back of your mind you contemplate, because when we think about how people develop their skills base, it's a combination of academic training, then we go to work and we do some on-the-job training, and then we garnish experience around what we see other people, how they go about doing stuff, and how I do stuff myself, and whether I have the ability to even catch what other people do and don't go around doing the same stupid stuff from their experiences. And then out of that complex gathering of information, we then eventually land up with a skill set, a competency level and a level of knowledge, hopefully. Are you maybe proposing or thinking at the back of your mind that, because I hear what you say there's traditional project management, and there's complex, and there's something that you call complex. Now I haven't gotten the sense what is the criteria, because we know now, in your view, what is the criteria of a traditional? It's cost, scope, time. I don't know whether there's others that you keep, and then there's this complexity. Are you maybe contemplating in your mind that somewhere people are, the traditional form of teaching people how to manage projects has its shortcomings, and that a different method of teaching people how to manage projects will allow them then to be able to master complex skills as well? Is it something that you pray that this thing will come ultimately down most probably to some training?
The issue is that everything around us in the environment, to some extent, is complex. If we look at it, if we look at nature, nature has dealt the best with complexity in terms of what their processes are. But lots of the complex solutions today were actually taken from nature, from science, medical, those things. Children know how to deal with complexity. You have to teach complexity and the management of complexity from a small age. You can't try and do it and indoctrinate people. They can try it, they can get to a stage where they can manage or be leaders in that field, but they have to develop additional skills. They have to have a background, a good grounding in terms of the process to come to a certain level and then proceed further into this. And there are tools available, but it's again tools that people have identified to say, if you want to be a complex project manager, this is what you have to do, or the training you have to do, or what you need to do going further. But most of those things only focus on one dimension going further. What I'm trying to do is to understand, taking all those one dimensions from the different tools that have been identified by Snowden and Boone and in the Knifin framework and the different aspects for identifying complexity, bringing them together and then saying what do these contribute to the makeup of the methodology that I'm trying to propose going forward. Does that make sense? Sorry.
No, maybe just throw people in the pot.
Please.
A lot of what you've spoken about is methodology. It's about skills. It's about things that are well documented, and your research has dug into all of that. Have you figured out what makes a complex project manager successful? Because I think that the thing that makes him successful isn't necessarily documented. And maybe instead of a methodology, there's actually, and I use the word life cycle because I don't know another word for it at the moment, but there's a certain life cycle to a complex project which people that get it right understand.
Yes.
And instead of giving them the skills to do the technical stuff, the tools to do the technical stuff, giving them the knowledge about what's behind it,
would probably be the greater value.
Correct. And I don't have a yes or a no answer for you, but what I can say is that I researched what organizations do throughout the world to manage complexity. And I'm adapting that process that they follow and what I got out of that to complex project management. So I'm taking from... Sorry,
isn't it a person that makes the difference?
No, the person certainly makes the difference, and that's one of the crux, where the project leader, it's not a project manager anymore, it's now a project leader that actually has to have the knowledge base and the skill going forward, the information. Yeah. But I've used organizations and how they manage complex projects. So where they've been successful, not so much manage complex projects, but manage complexity within their organizations. And I've applied that or pulled it through to see if I can apply that to project management.
I know we have to wrap up, but I don't want to lose that point, so I'm going to leave you with a question to think about. Following up from that is, think about whether what you need to produce as a product, instead of it being a methodology, that is a set of attributes that the leadership system should have. And I speak about leadership system because there's no which comes back to the problem closing point. But again, if we follow on from there and say thank you, it's always easy for us to sort of shoot from there.
But I think that's the idea of just getting ideas and questions.
No, it's been great,
because
thank you.
I want to touch on something else. If Liameka says he's going to do a method, he must have tested that method before he can present them.
Correct.
Which will take you probably 5 to 10 years. I would be great if you want to do it for 5. No. So just be careful for that also. Because from
I'll probably put a rider in the end and say, this hasn't been tested.
And then we will say, okay, you've not done your preliminary work. Let's have some. So be careful, you don't need to trap yourself by using methodology. Because that will assume you've tested it and you're going to document the results.
Right.
So just be careful for that.
Good point, yeah. So maybe I'll change the title.
Yeah, just in the... And you can change that.
Yeah, that's fine. Dead right. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Prof. Yeah, I want to ask you something.
Yes, last question.
Your understanding of complexity, is it the same thing with complicatedness?
I beg your pardon?
The word complicated.
Yeah.
Is it exactly the same thing with
No, never. Okay. It can't be. I contrast it. I went in and I did research on complicated, simple, and I contrasted that back to complex. And I explained as to why complicated exists, and that's why I'm saying that complicated relates to things that you can take apart. And you can put it back together again and it'll work. Where complex is a totally different concept.
But which makes it even more difficult.
Yes.
Because that means there's no algorithm for that.
Yes, that's no algorithm for that.
Yeah.
But that's because of the uncertainty that brings to the
by the
table.
time when you are talking in your research now, you have to be very careful when you talk about complexity and when you are going to talk about complicated.
I have been. Thanks. Yes, no, that's right. Thank you, but yeah, exactly.
Well, you all know
thank you very much.
For any one of you who want to work with him, please join him. It will be great.
I like your work, actually. I know somebody who abandoned a PhD to do some project management because he couldn't handle this.
Yes.
But I'm not trying to say you are going there. I like your enthusiasm.
So please reach out if you wish and engage with him. That would be great. Peter, thank you very much.